Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking at a German destroyer, and it's a premium. It's the Z39, which has been around for, I think, quite a while. I actually found that I have this thing on my personal account. I don't think I've ever played it really. Must have been in a bundle at some point, and I just picked it up as I went. So finally, after many requests today, I'm going to get around to looking at this ship. This ship, I think, predates the introduction of the German scout cruiser line, so the thing that eventually leads up to the Elbing, and is kind of a little bit in the middle between the regular line and that. But on the other hand, the Z39 also actually existed, which is always refreshing, and is something that happens a lot more in mid-tier than it happens in the higher tiers. This was a 1936A design destroyer, so one of the destroyers that had 150mm cruiser caliber guns, and she was completed relatively late in the war, so mostly she was busy doing mining duty in the Baltics and fire support against the advancing Soviet troops. At the end of the war, she was eventually handed over to the Americans, and the Americans turned her into an American destroyer. She became, I think it was DD939, but they didn't keep her for an awful lot of time. They were mostly interested in checking out the engines, and eventually handed her over to the French, which then, in the end, ended up cannibalizing her for parts, and that was the end of the ship. But yeah, this was a destroyer that has served in 3 navies over the course of the years, which is not something you see every day. Anyway, so the Z39, how does she compare to the rest of them? Let's have a quick look. The first and obvious comparison we're going to have to make is to the Z31, which is the tech tree equivalent, sort of, on the line that leads towards the Elbing, so the scout cruiser line. I'm calling them scout cruisers, even though they're classified as destroyers in-game, but just due to their playstyle of not quite being frontline destroyers, sort of. So the Z31 gets 2 smoke screens, whereas the Z39 gets a much more traditional, what you would think, German destroyer or destroyer hunter layout. She gets 2 engine boosts, 2 sonars, and she gets 2 rapid reloads, which is something that's a little bit unusual. She doesn't have quite as many hit points as the Z31, but does share her, well, not great maneuverability. She also technically shares the guns, although they are a little different in the description. For once, on the Z39, these are 48 caliber length, and on the Z31, these would be 55 caliber length. They are a bit more punchy and have a better range on the tech tree equivalent. On the Z39, they are more along they're more along the, I would almost say, similar to what the Italians have. Rapid firing, but relatively short range guns. 5.5 second base reload, and they do a little bit less damage on the armor piercing. Torpedoes are very different. So on the Elbing line, let's call it that, you get technically more what you could consider sea mines, because they are extremely slow with 50 knots. And here we get what, by all intents and purposes, looks a bit more like the traditional German destroyer line in terms of torpedoes, although the range, I think, is a little bit shorter. And obviously the reload here is a lot quicker. The AA, for all intents and purposes, is inconsequential, because it doesn't make any difference if you have it or not. And she has a slightly worse concealment. Now, if we compare it to the Leberecht Maß, to the traditional German destroyer line, Tier 7, then we will find that they have a relatively similar skill set, only that she gets the rapid reload on top. Has slightly more hit points than the Leberecht Maß, but the maneuverability isn't quite there. And obviously she does get the 150mm. Now, I am trying very hard to remember if the Leberecht Maß had the 150s before. I think she did, but there was one in the line that didn't, so I'm not sure which one exactly it was. But a while ago, the traditional German destroyer line has been refitted to carry 128mm guns. Even though that's not in all cases historically accurate, these guns are technically, what I would say, are better. Because the intended purpose of the German destroyer line is to be a frontline destroyer hunter. That's what they're very, very good at. They are reasonably sturdy. They've got excellent armor piercing on these guns. And with the 128s, actually a relatively rapid rate of fire. The problem with these newer 150s is that they are very, very punchy. Now, why is that a problem? Well, it's quite good if you're up against things like light cruisers or even heavy cruisers. I've citadel Miyokos with these 150s. Against destroyers at very close engagements, you will overpenetrate, which, given that these things do 630 points of base damage, and means you end up with 25% minus the armor protection, whatever measly one it is, you'll end up with 150 points of damage that you're doing, which is not an awful lot. So this is one of those ships where you actually have to almost play a heavy cruiser game. So treat these like 203mm guns, where if you are very, very close to enemy destroyers, you're probably better off using the high explosive on the ship. This is not a problem you would have in the Leibrecht Maß, because the 128s are perfectly capable of not over-penetrating destroyers and wreaking a huge amount of havoc on them. The other problem that these 150s have, well, first of all, there's only 4 of them compared to the 5 on the Leibrecht Maß, and the dispersion is well, almost French in its ludicrousness occasionally. So she can be a little sketchy in her dispersion, which is really annoying, because if you're trying to get too close, you can't use the armor piercing, and if you're staying too far away, the dispersion gets on your way. And the 8-kilometer base range, which is equivalent to the 128s that you find on the Leibrecht Maß, is also a little bit of an issue then. The torpedoes are almost the same as on the Leibrecht Maß, just a little bit shorter range. The AA, again, is inconsequential, and the surface detection is actually worse. So, do we have here a worse Leibrecht Maß? Sort of. I would say the torpedoes, for all intents and purposes, are a bit worse. The guns are not bad, but she's in this weird middle spot between the long-range scout cruiser play isn't quite there, and the short-range destroyer hunting doesn't work because the guns overpenetrate. And she does not also necessarily have the maneuverability there. I mean, nobody would accuse the Leibrecht Maß of being an extremely maneuverable ship. The German destroyers tend not to be, but this thing's even worse. So, what are we doing with this then? Well, like I said, she kind of sits in the middle. The torpedoes are more usable than on the Z39. But the guns are sort of, you need to play at a very specific range to make them effective. That said, it's a tier 7. So oftentimes you get to play top tier against mid-tier ships. And not just mid-tier ships, but also mid-tier captains. So this is tier 7 can be a tier that, again, sits sort of in the middle between tier 6, where you're playing tier 6 game, or against tier 6 opponents, and just having a field day, and against tier 8 opponents, and things get very, very sketchy. So what have I done in setup? Now, you get the choice between torpedo reload and gun reload. I'm going for gun reload here because it also gives me traverse speed. These guns have a 12 degrees per second base traverse, which is not great, especially if you're trying to, if you have to play them at their effective range. And you need to dodge occasionally, so having a bit more traverse is not a bad thing, which is also why I'm using the main battery mod 1 here instead of the main battery mod 2, which would have made sense, but I do really want to have the traverse. Conversely, I am playing currently with concealment. This is one of those ships where you can argue pretty well that you don't want to use concealment. The thing is, the reason I'm sticking with concealment here is the relatively short torpedo range. So if you got yourself into a fight that you've lost most of your hit points, if you don't build it for concealment, you're effectively not capable of stealth torping with this ship. With the concealment build, you sort of can still, and it gives you an option of for the late game to, you know, not be immediately deleted when you're when you get inside torpedo range. The camouflage. I've put the historical camo on because it's a premium, and you know, people tend to keep premiums, so why not stick one on? It gives us range on the main battery, which is great, range on the torpedoes, which is sorely needed, a max traverse speed, which is also very good because this ship is not the most maneuverable, and better surface detection. So thoroughly recommended to get that. And with this, we end up with a final stat of a 4.3 second turn time. The guns are down to 5.3 second reload, and we've got the turret traverse up to 15 degrees per second. And we do have the torpedo range up to almost Leberecht Mars levels, and the surface detection down to 5.6 kilometers, which isn't grandiose, but is workable. So with that, we can relatively comfortably stealth torpedo if we need to. And yeah, this is one reason I'm actually playing on the press account, because time zones, and because it's always not quite fun if you see me playing against 6 bots and 1 player or something. And I could actually stick a captain in here that gets all the way up to 11, because the one thing I wanted to see was what the APCS is doing here. And this is, again, playing into the over-penetrating problem, because if you are playing with APCS, which makes sense because that makes you more of a cruiser killer, you end up having to sacrifice some of the destroyer hunter capabilities that you're having otherwise. And obviously the master reloader skill for an actual rapid reload, letting it last a bit longer. And fire supremacy for an additional one. So if you set up the ship this way, and because it's a premium, it kind of makes sense to, and you might be able to bring a captain, or either have a specific captain, or you know, retrain someone, or just use someone from the original lines, from either line really. Then you probably may have this, especially if you're coming from the L-wing line, you may have the APCS, because it really boosts the power of these guns. But I wanted to show you what the price is that you're paying for this, and that you have to start playing more like the Scout Cruiser line if you're doing that. All right, I think we've talked enough. Let's see some gameplay. In the first game, we are bottom tier. We're playing Epicenter on Pacific Islands, and we're up against a Magi, Colorado, and 4 destroyers, an Aki, an Ognivoy, a Haida, and a Yudachi. And this is where you normally say in a German destroyer, yay, 4 destroyers, I am made for this. But if you're running the APCS skill and these 150s, and you are suddenly more in a scout cruiser role, so you're more similar to the Gustav Julius Merker that we've got on our own team here. Now let's go on this. So you can't really get into a knife fight for 2 reasons. First of all, you don't have the maneuverability for it. And second of all, the guns are too powerful, which is a weird thing to say. But you actually have to switch to the high explosive if you're getting into close range engagements. Or, you know, just don't get into close range engagements, but stay at mid-range. The guns are not as precise as I would really have liked it to, but with the rapid reload you actually have the firepower to make something happen. So first of all, we're going to use the preheating and the engine boost, because this is not a fast ship, to get ourselves into the center ring. Now the plan here is to maybe take the center ring, and we do have the Merker with us here, who has similar issues with the armor piercing against destroyers. So let's get into the center ring. I'll probably drop some torpedoes. We can be a little bit more liberal with these torpedoes, because remember, these are not the Scout Cruiser Line torpedoes, the sea mines. These are the faster version that you get in the normal destroyers, just with a shorter range. And they do reload relatively quickly, so you can be quite liberal in just dropping them preemptively. We are taking the middle ring, which means that the enemy destroyers are a little bit behind schedule, I would say, almost. But let's see what the center ring is going to start looking like, because I'm going to be alone in here. So right now I'm alone in it, so I am going to drop a couple of torpedoes preemptively in that general direction, and then just hang around here and wait and see what's happening. Okay, enemy destroyer in the cap, there he is. Hello, Mr. Ognivoy. Let me introduce you to my guns. Now, again, you only have 4 of them, but this range, like 4 to 6 kilometers, is decent. And there's the Akizuki. So the Ognivoy is going behind. We're just going to use the island to defend ourselves from any torpedoes. We have landed a hit on something. I think that was the Haida that has taken one. And the Ognivoy decides that he wants to... he chooses violence and comes around behind the island, which allows me to sink another nice salvo into him. So with a rapid reload and a bit of jockeying, we've done a nice 13,000 points and already got 2 destroyers down to relatively low health. Now the rest of my team is pushing into the center cup, so I don't need to be here. We've driven the Haida off, and the Akizuki who has bumped in his frantic attempts to escape into the Akizuki, but is now also on very low hit points. So. And is now very dead. So Akizuki next. There comes the bot Colorado. So let's drop some torpedoes on him. And there sits the Yudachi out there, who is not going to be doing an awful lot against me because he's got deep water torpedoes. So if you're up against a battleship, you can, even with the armor-piercing cup shell, try to go for the deck plating, or you do the more traditional thing and go for the bow section. You're not going to necessarily over-penetrate the 32 millimeters on battleship bows, so that is perfectly viable for farming damage. If you're going for if you're aiming too high or hitting the gun turrets, then you're not really going to do an awful lot. So it's easier to just do that. Okay, so the centering is secure. We've got a battleship and a destroyer in there, so I can help out a little bit on the side here. Now, again, you're not a destroyer hunter per se, because with this setup, the guns, the 150s, are going to over-penetrate at close range, so we don't want to get close. We want to fight them at somewhere between 4 and 8 kilometers is a comfortable range. Plus, there's a bunch of them, so let's introduce ourselves to that Akizuki over there and get a couple shots out. Now, the dispersion, again, and there's also the Yudachi. I'm going to drop some torpedoes just generally in this direction here, just in case anyone comes out there. See if we can finish off the Yudachi, because he's quite dangerous. He's quite dangerous against our Kansas here. The Akizuki has finished off our friendly North Carolina, and you can see the dispersion being hilarious at times and just going everywhere. Now, he has to dodge torpedoes, which hopefully throws him off from that extremely aggressive Kansas. We have landed 1 torpedo hit on the Yudachi. I don't have to be afraid of his torpedoes. The Akizuki, on the other hand, can perfectly fine torpedo me, so he smokes up and just wants to go farm some battleships. Let's get some shots off at him, sonar up, just so that we know if anything's coming, and the Kansas knows if anything is coming. Yeah, Kansas, you are extremely brave there. I'm not sure if that's very wise. Both of them have now smoked up. And I'm going to go spot torpedoes for you. Yep, there they come. So you know they're coming, right? And at this range, I have to be careful to hit the belt armor on the destroyers to not over-penetrate them. There's the Akizuki. Get some shots out at this guy. And again, reverse here now to open up the distance against the Yudachi, such that we can still reliably penetrate the belt armor. And yeah, at this range, 6 kilometers, we're getting full penetrations regardless where we're hitting. So there come some more torpedoes. These might be Ognivoy torpedoes, because we've got all 3 of them here now, and all 3 are on low hit points. So let's see if we can finish them all off. But I think the Kansas isn't choosing the right fight here. If I put it that way. But yeah, we'll try to finish them all off. There come some more torpedoes, and yeah, I think that Kansas is about done for. Yep, Kansas is dead. So now it's up to us to finish off these destroyers. Fortunately, they're all on relatively low hit points, so even if it is an Akizuki, an Ognivoy, and a Yudachi, so that's a decent amount of guns facing me here. I should be able to finish these guys off. Now, where's that Aki going? Okay, we don't know where he's going. I'm just going to drop some torpedoes in the general direction of everybody and see if we hit something. But I should be perfectly capable of gunning these guys down. It's a fire from the Aki. Not going to Damacon that. Oh, there he is. Hello. And that is a dead Akizuki. And we do have to watch out with torpedoes. But there's the Ognivoy. I want to catch this guy. Yeah, we might be ending up taking 1 here if I can't maneuver between. And yes, this is a scout cruiser. You can't easily do so. So let's take 1 torpedo. That's okay. The fire's already burnt out and I've got a heal coming off. And that Ognivoy is a 1-shot. So if we're just going on reverse, and that should be a dead Ognivoy. There he goes. And that just leaves the Yudachi over there. who has tried to find himself something else that he can fight, but is now sailing broadside on because he's got other destroyer problems, and is also now very dead, which is the Kraken Unleashed in the end of the game, because I think that we won on points at this point. So yeah, against enemy destroyers, actually not that easy, because you have to be a little bit careful with the aiming. But if you're coming from the scout cruiser line, it should not be a problem. In return, these 150s, especially with the APCS, are really, really punchy, and you can do a lot of damage with these guns alone. What if, however, the other thing happens that I mentioned earlier, and you're landing yourself in a tier 6 game? Well, here we are. We are playing Domination on New Dawn. I like Domination maps. Against Nagato, West Virginia, Gneisenau, a Perth, a Kirkdine, and a Mayhem as the lonely enemy destroyer. So off we go, and we'll see where we spawn, and we'll see what we do. But this is actually mostly a tier 7 game, but yes, it sort of classifies as mid-tier, right? We are spawning over at sea, and I've got a cruiser and a battleship with me. That's not a terrible mixture. So let's head in there, switch to the armor piercing, narrow spread. It is an Indianapolis and a Nagato that we've got with us. So that's not a terrible mixture. I'm going to go in cap and scout and see what we can find. We're either going to find the Mayhem, but for sure we're going to find 3 ships, unless they're going all middle. So let's head in here and see what our opposition is. And that is the bot Miyoko. Okay, not yet gonna open up. There's one battleship out there as well. I want to see first what else is here. So far it's just the Miyoko. Anybody else? Yeah, okay, there's the Perth. Alright, so let's drop some torpedoes in their general direction. And they just make themselves useful, and then we start gunning for the Perth, because the Miyoko is just a bot, and I've got a Nagato right behind me, and he should be able to take care of that. Interestingly enough, the Gneisenau is not pushing, so that's the end of the Miyoko, and this is a light cruiser, so I can do some damage against that thing. And if you want to aim, try to aim a little higher to try to get the deck hits, because you're not. Yeah, there you go. That's much more like it. Okay, so the Perth is running low on hit points, and hello, Mr. Gneisenau. Okay, so these 2 guys can probably take care of the Perth. Indianapolis? Did Indianapolis have radar? I think it did. I'm not 100% certain. Now let's get our torpedoes reloaded, which happens relatively quickly. The Perth is. We've got 2 battleships coming down this way, so that Perth is very dead. And then we do need to start orienting ourselves towards the middle, because the rest of the enemy team is all heading out to the other cup. Let's get that Gneisenau out of the way, however, because it looks like our battleships are a little bit hesitant to come in. So this is what I mean with you can stealth torp if you need to. Let's see where he's going. I think he is reversing. I'm not quite sure what he's trying to do, because he could be rushing that Indianapolis. I mean, he doesn't have any torpedoes. I do, however. I mean, maybe he knows that I'm here. Okay, can we get that Perth killed, please? It is something I would rather not deal with. So let's get that thing shot. Okay, Indianapolis, good job. Gneisenau now is running into my torpedoes. And now, because Indianapolis is a cruiser and does not want to be Gneisenau, I'm going to try and distract him a little bit. Hello, Mr. Gneisenau. I have torpedoes for you and guns. I am still aiming for the bow section. Again, you might be able to get citadel hits through the deck, but these are 150s. They're not doing a huge amount of citadel damage anyway, and you get the more reliable hits if the guns aren't, if the dispersion isn't trolling you. You get the more reliable hits. And you see, this is the thing with the torpedoes. They've already reloaded. So, assuming that he might be trying to dodge the second spread after I've just done that to him. In fact, no, he's actually not interested in dodging the second spread. He keeps reversing, so well, he might still take a couple of those. And that is the end of the Gneisenau. Okay, so that's that flank cleaned up. What's the rest of my team doing? Well, we are behind on points, because the Indianapolis has just fallen to the West Virginia. That lone battleship up there north is going to die, and we're going to need more capture circles. So said, you 2 battleships, please head over to B Cup. That's where you're going to be needed, because we're going to need to take and hold B Cup, and I'm going to go ahead and scout and see what I can find. First customer, there is a battleship out there. Let's see what that thing's doing. And then we can make ourselves useful by capturing B Cup. There's also what's that? A Mayhem, I think. Okay, that's the West Virginia. Where is he going? Are you coming this way? No, he's going behind the island. So no use dropping torpedoes right now. Let's see if we can surprise the West Virginia. And he should be well outside my spotting range, and until I get the island between him and myself. Oh, game! I'm calling shenanigans. I was not spotted. He's behind the island. There's no way he's spotting me, and I can't see him. Well, so there goes my surprise factor. The battleship has died, so we're now 1 kill down, and we're down on caps and points. We'll need to make something happen here, which means that the Mayhen's coming this way. Yep, there he is. Okay, so no ambushing the West Virginia. We are dealing with the Mayhen first. Hello, Mr. Mayhen. Sonar up. Let's see where he's going. I'm not sure where he's going. Maybe he's trying to do a torpedo run. Okay, I have some torpedoes. So either you dodge or, yeah, or you run right into those. That's gonna hurt. Ouch. But here you start seeing the problem, right? I am too close to the Mayhen. my guns are over-penetrating, so they're not doing anything. But the Mayhen hasn't realized that he has guns because mid-tier games, and is trying to torpedo me, which isn't happening. Now I'm relatively low on hit points, but we're still 100 points behind. So we need to get that West Virginia killed. And yeah, this range, armor piercing is starting to struggle a little bit unless I can hit the bow section reliably. So battleships, would you mind making yourself useful? There's also that Kirkdine over there. Okay, that thing wants me dead. Nagato, there's a Kirkdine just coming around the... Oh, you're focused in on the West Virginia. Okay, where's that Colorado? Did I not tell you that we need to capture B Cup? Come on, people. Listen, pay attention, will you? You're on full hit points. You've got a full hit points Nagato, with full hit points Colorado. We should be able to do that, right? And that Kirkdine is still trying to kill me, but not happening. Nagato, Kirkdine, there. Kill the cruiser. It's right next to you. You just need to turn around a little bit, blap him in the side, and he dead. That thing there, please kill that. We are still behind, almost 100 points behind. Even though we equalize the kills. That West Virginia needs to die, and it needs to die today. Nagato, please, that thing, kill it. Can you... No. Nagato has blinders on and is zoned in against that Kirkdine. Against the West Virginia. Okay, well, the West Virginia needs to die, but Nagato doesn't have angles on him. Okay, Colorado takes out the Kirkdine. Thank you. At least someone pays attention. So now Nagato has no excuse anymore. But we need to kill that West Virginia. We're holding the capture circle. We are going to win on points, but I would really like that West Virginia to die because I'm not sure I'm going to survive. Come on. One more salvo. Colorado's got shots out. Well done, Colorado. Okay, West Virginia's dead. Enemy Nagato takes a couple of my torps, but that is game. Even if I die, we now have enough. And these battleships have taken a single scratch to the paint. Then I will have enough points. So that took some doing. But yeah, this is something you could totally have done in something like the Leibrecht Mars as well, obviously, because it's mid-tier games. But we've almost done 100,000 points of damage, and compared to the Scout Cruiser line, I really am enjoying the faster torpedo reload. Whew. There we go. So we've still done 25,000 points of damage with the main battery, but the torpedoes were kind of where it was at in this particular game. So is this a ship that I would necessarily recommend? I think this ship is a bit aged, and it's a fun ship. It's a fun premium destroyer to play, but you have to be somewhat careful and know what it can and can't do. If you're really more after if you're going up the Scout Cruiser line and are more interested in the full-on Scout Cruiser play, so long-range gunnery more, then the Tech Tree equivalent might be a slightly better choice. If you're really into destroyer hunting, then this isn't as good as the Leibrecht Mars either, and the torpedoes are sort of inferior. So you need to do a lot of boosting to make this a really good ship. That said, it's still a fun ship. It's still a fun little middle ground and kind of nostalgic when the German destroyers had 150mm guns in the main line sort of thing. But for a destroyer hunter, I would say the German main line be a better choice. Still not a bad ship, and definitely you can definitely have some fun games, especially if you're top tier. Anyway, that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.